Hey, Reset listeners, I've got something super special for you. So, it's been a year of us all being stuck inside, and I think it is not a better time to reset, which is why I am so excited to announce a partnership with the Miraval Berkshires, which is a one-of-a-kind spa in Lenox, Massachusetts. Basically, we're launching the Reset Weekend. April 30th to May 2nd, we're creating an amazing weekend where you can go, relax, get spa treatments, hike, sit by the pool, get every massage you could ever dream of in a one-of-a-kind, amazing space. I had the honor of going to this space back last summer, and it fueled my soul. And I think once you spend a weekend at Miraval, you're going to love it. So I'd love for you to join me on April 30th to May the 2nd for a Reset Weekend. Details are in the show notes, and come on through and check out Miraval Berkshires.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Mignot, CEO of the Cultural Communications Agency, Flash. Each episode, I bring a different business leader who's doing game-changing work. And this episode, I'm so excited to have Beth Ann Kaminkow, who is the global CEO of VMLY&R Commerce. Yes, it's a mouthful, but she has an amazing story, a fantastic leader, and lots of great nuggets to share. It's going to be a great conversation. Take a listen. Hey, Beth Ann.
Hi, Laura.
How's it going?
It's going great. Thanks for having me on this Good Friday.
I know, it is a good Friday, the first Friday in April. So the podcast always starts with the same question, and I am fascinated because I think your answer is going to be kind of awesome. So, Beth Ann, what was your first job?
My first job actually was at the Gap, and it was at the Gap during a time when that was still a new up and coming amazing brand that hit the retail world. So I was in commerce, I guess, from the very beginning. I got that job when I was I think just turning 15 years old. And along with the job came a blue Schwinn bike. It was my first 10 speed. And I was actually riding down the streets of Baltimore, Maryland, from my neighborhood in Mount Washington to Reisterstown Road Plaza, where the Gap had newly opened. And I talked myself into getting a job before I was technically, I think the age that you were supposed to get on payrolls. But there I was working my very first retail job at the Gap.
So you
and ever since, Laura, I've been working ever since.
You're like, I have not stopped since then.
I haven't stopped.
Awesome. So what do you do when you were at the Gap?
I was a salesperson, and the cool thing, about a job like the Gap, and I think everyone who draws from these kinds of experiences will have similar stories, but there was that big binder, the 3-ring binder that had all the things that went into making a good salesperson. When someone enters the store, you give them the 15 seconds, then you go for the approach. They come out of the dressing room, you tell them that that outfit would look great with a belt. So you really do learn a lot of the fundamentals of sales, right there on the floor. And then also, most importantly, how you fold clothes and if you have your stack of jeans in your closet, mine are still stacked like they would be at the Gap. So really,
so you have the perfect fold?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So wait, what is a perfect fold for jeans? So is it 3 or is it in half?
Yeah, so you don't really go with the, seam. I mean, you do go with the seams. You don't go with the, what is it called when you have down the center, which is always never a good look. So you basically take them open, you fold them in half, and then you fold them in thirds.
So it's thirds.
Yeah, it's probably like a Marie Kondo move before we all knew who Marie Kondo was.
Because it's all, because I remember whenever I go to the store, they're always just so tightly stacked. And I'm always like, how does someone sit and do this?
Yeah, you don't want to go for the crease in the center. That crease in the center is not a good look.
Got it.
That's the mistake people make. Yeah.
No center crease.
Yeah.
Noted. Yeah, because it's funny. Like I've been like, because of course none of my jeans fit, so I just bought like 4 pairs, and like I haven't folded them. They're literally sitting on, they're sitting on one of my chairs. And I'm like, where am I gonna put these? I have to fold them somewhere. So I'm gonna try the 3-fold and see if I can stack them neatly on the shelf. Because jeans.
But you know what, we
But
had great
also,
music playing. Like I can still remember the song list, the playlist at the time. And it was like everything that you think about in terms of that throwback to that early plaza mall moment of like, the wafting smells in the hallways. I think during my break, I used to get like Mrs. Fields cookies. The Snickerdoodle was
of
like my
course,
favorite. Yeah.
you're a snickerdoodle person. Oh, you see, I have never been a
Oh,
snickerdoodle friend. I've
so
always
good.
been. I'm a purist of a chocolate chip cookie. Like that's pretty much
Yeah.
the only cookie I like. Snickerdoodles, interesting, but again, it's like me. I'm very much when it comes to foods, very specific. So like chocolate chip cookies, pepperoni pizza. Like these are the things I
Right.
like, and I don't waver.
You have your
I'll eat other
go-to.
stuff, but yeah, it's my kind of a weird little quirk. But yeah, like I'm sure, like hearing in the music, I mean, like anyone who's ever worked retail, like I always say that, like we've all learned one how to deal with crazy people.
Mm-hmm.
We also understand that, like customers are going to have insane needs, and if you can help them, they will love you forever. And those skills come in super handy because like when are we not dealing with crazy people who if we do something great will love forever, and understanding the customer always has needs, like that literally is everything that we do in business.
Absolutely. And then, dealing with your colleagues on the floor. And it was a little competitive too, because you did get credit for your sale. So, sort of learning that whole dynamic and, how you're really buds and friends and have great chemistry on the floor. But at the same time, you're still trying to, convert the sale yourself. And
Yep.
yeah, there were lots of good lessons. I'm still friendly actually with some of the people that I work with during that time. So I guess that's what we have Facebook to thank for.
Yeah, Facebook has become like, you can always go back and find, oh hey, she's still doing stuff, cool. um it is the living yearbook, I like to call it. So you would go from the gap to now. What's that career journey been like?
Oh my goodness. Many jobs in between. I think that I did know I wanted to go into not commerce, but communications from the time I was in high school. And so I went to Newhouse School of Communications at Syracuse University. Won't go into all that story, how I totally finally ended up there, but it was my wish. And after graduation, earlier on in my career, and this was really before a startup was a startup thing, I got involved with a team of people who were founding a company for the early days of technology. And they felt like in the marketing services space, there was no one that was really specializing in the technology sector, both from a business to business and a consumer standpoint. So that was really attractive to me. I was always interested in sort of what was more innovative and where the future was going. So I joined forces with them. I was taking a kind of strategic measurement-based approach to the business in the technology space. That mattered a lot. And so we were the first communications firm and consultancy focused on the tech market, which at that time equaled growth. So we grew very quickly, and about 18 months in, were acquired by Omnicom. And then once in the Omnicom family, we were growing into this global organization. IBM at the time and Philips were two of our really big clients that were taking us into global footprint around the world. So it gave me incredible global experiences, again, early in my career. And then eventually, after 2001, which was the tech bubble burst, and a number of things that happened during that time, I went on within Omnicom shortly after that to join Tracy Locke, which was the opposite of a startup. It was a company that was in its 90s at the time and wasn't tech at all. It was consumer packaged goods and retail, restaurants, franchise business. So very, very different, business model environment, based in Dallas, Texas, but around the country and looking with aspirations to be global. So I went in as the number 2, and eventually in 2011 became their first female CEO in their 100-year history. So took them to their 100th year in 2013. I was number 11 in their sequence of CEOs, and it sounds easy as I say it now, but it was, a lot of milestones, both personally and professionally, and then for the organization to make that a reality. But it was an incredible ride and time for that business. And then also within Omnicom, because it was, becoming a much bigger player as a holding company in the space. WPP, which is where I am now, was always in our sites. They were the largest at the time. And I learned a lot actually from watching WPP throughout the years. I eventually went on to be a CMO. Once you're on the agency side at the C level, you become both empathetic and sympathetic for the client side, and have, I think, a secret desire to want to know what it's like to be a client. So I was, I went over to Westfield to be their global chief marketing officer, as they were really thinking of reinventing them all. So it was a nice close the loop with my Gap experience of, at the time where the Gap actually was suffering decades later, and the whole infrastructure of a mall developer was, really challenged to think about how do we reinvent as a digital and a physical operation, and largely experiential. So it was a great learning experience and next sort of chapter for me. And then ultimately felt like I was missing the professional services side, but I wanted to come back in the heart of data and analytics and consultancies, which were moving into our space. So joined Kantar to pull together some of its divisions into a consulting offer. And after a couple years there, got to know WPP more, and Mark Reed was moving into his position, and began conversations that led me to the global CEO of Geometry, which has now become VMLY&R Commerce. And, really looking at how do we reimagine commerce now for the future post-COVID world that has been dramatically impacted, largely positively, because of the pandemic and some of the forces that were at play with shifting consumer behaviors online and our shopping behaviors and where we are today. So it sounds like I had some vision of where my future was going to play out, 25 years forward when I was at the Gap, but not at all the case. It's a lot of it has been, serendipity and just desire to want to be where the world is changing, and have some kind of a role in helping to reimagine and have impact on that change.
Wow. It's fascinating because you hear when you see a lot of C-level executives, it's always fascinating to think about the career path of where they go. But it also sounds like you really, when the opportunity arose, you went for it. And I think oftentimes we don't see that enough in women leaders. And because of any number of circumstances, but it sounds like you really took the bull by the horns, like, yep, I'm making this happen.
Well, I think if I were to link it back to, women leaders and traits, part of what I did, and it probably was a little bit of that underdog spirit, if you will, was when I saw an unmet need in the organization, I was courageous about saying, I think I have part of the solution, or I think I see a way through this, and I could bring a vision or ambition to it. So I think I turned, one of my personal sort of rallies and lines are, I take lemons and make lemon meringue pie. So I think that's part of it, right? A little step further than even lemonade, is being able to,
that's specific.
Right, exactly. It's seeing sometimes what other people would think of as being like a mess or not actually opportunity. But being able to see, actually, no, that is, if I lean into that space or that unknown or that uncertainty, and bring with it a sense of order and vision and possibility, that is actually where I can become more necessary and essential to the organization, have other people be able to do the same. And if you make something of it, then that becomes, your platform and creates more profile and visibility.
And that's the thing. So how are you able to sort of carve out, Beth Ann's visibility so that people could say, oh, when we're thinking about filling for this role, like Westfield, because like that's a completely different universe than on the agency side.
Yeah, so I think it comes from, they first approached me with a consulting opportunity. And I also have another sort of ethos or model that I, use a lot, which is yes and, comes from improv.
Of course.
Be in trouble sometimes. I'm not one of those people that took that important advice to learn how to say no. I often do not say no, and even with employees. I usually, because there's, what does no get you other than limitations? And I'm all about kind of building capacity. And I there's times where I've like said to myself, oh, I can't believe I just said yes to this. But usually it has led to, there's been very few things I haven't been able to actually follow through or deliver on. And it does usually lead to interesting connections or an openness to discover more and bring more into your life and your world. And same thing for others. When people have come to me and asked for something, my immediate response is to try to figure out, yes, and how do we then make it happen? How do I deliver on this within good reason and within the right boundaries if that needs to be set? So I think that for me, that was the same thing with Westfield. So when they brought the consulting opportunity to us and I started working in that capacity, I realized that, this is not just a historic legacy company that no longer has opportunity for the future. And, as I got deeper into their business desires and their own ambition for what was going to create value and how they were going to unlock new types of value, I realized I was going to learn a ton. It wasn't your typical CMO job because I was working on an exco that, one had never had a woman before, but never really had a marketer there. And this wasn't marketing as they used to define it, which was a person that would blow up balloons and launch their new center or mall somewhere. It was somebody who was really a holistic thinker that was bringing the disciplines of design and brand and experience and digital together under, a specific architecture and, design for their future. And so that was a really big mission and a really great place to learn and contribute in a way that they were really open to at the time.
Awesome. And it's interesting because you never know when you pop into these opportunities, but like bringing that strategy, bringing understanding of that brand are so key in helping people see that there's so much more you can always do, and reimagining your thinking around that. So that's incredible. And I'm just like, wow, damn, Beth Ann. So talk to me about time. So obviously you've had a really amazing career and you've been able to make some really awesome jumps. Tell me about a time when you had a challenge where you're like, there's no way I'm getting through this. And then you did.
Oh my goodness. Those happen like all the time on a weekly basis. And I'm not just saying that.
Yes.
I mean, when you said like, oh, you've had an awesome career, I am grateful and I completely feel that way all the time. And I take stock of it all the time too. Like I'm very careful not to ever take it for granted. But at the same time, that comes from, absolute ups and downs. That's life. I remember one time I was in a synagogue actually and was listening to a rabbi give a sermon, and he was talking about the EKG of life and the fact that that's what being alive is all about, that, you're not ever flatlining, you're always up or you're down. And that is your heartbeat. That's your breath. That is the pace and the rhythm of life. And I remember hearing that thinking, that is just so beautiful and so true. And I never want to forget that. And so, even through other things that weren't just work related, there is always personal challenges and hardships that we face. And that means we're alive, so if you want the highs, you have to kind of take the lows with it and learn from it. And I think that's most importantly what I've tried to do. I mean, even just a few months ago, as we were moving from geometry into VMLY&R commerce, there's always dynamics that go with those things that become opportunities to either, sort of accept and embrace and engage, or to retreat and to, get concerned, get worried and anxious and, view it negatively. I'm fortunate too, because I've always had a guiding principle as a leader and brought this to my leadership teams, but also in the organization. And John Cook has this, which is assume good intent. And I think that, that is always really important too. I think we all know this, we are our own worst enemy. And what happens in our own minds and our own heads and situations are the things that oftentimes become our speed bumps or what hold us back. And so I've tried to be super self-aware of that and constantly challenging my own ability to as for myself personally, but more importantly, as a leader, when you have the responsibility of thousands of people under your care, you have to set that tone for others. So I know I'm not giving you a specific instance other than to say it's repeated for me all the time. And like I just used example of becoming VMLY&R Commerce, you have these moments that can be defining positively and or negatively, and you feel the heightened sense of anxiety or concern while you're going through it. And you have to constantly give yourself that perspective in that moment to, to breathe and almost let go of the negativity, to be open to what is a possibility. And then whether it's a big thing or a small thing, as you go forward, you just keep repeating that over and over again. So it becomes like a muscle and an ability that you have for yourself personally and as a leader. So all along the way, Laura, there have been massive moments that are testing you and turning points. The flights where you're thinking over the conversation that just happened and you're like in tears,
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And, and luckily for me, well, not luckily, I'll say I'm the leader who, while I'm very comfortable being vulnerable and I try very hard to, in positive ways, bring that vulnerability forward in my leadership. I have not been one that, that sheds too many tears outwardly, but I do have my moments where you get in that plane seat or you get in on your morning run and you do have to just very authentically and genuinely. Yeah. Yeah.
It's necessary. And I think there's always this line between being vulnerable, but then being okay for you. And I think that's the fine line you always have to walk, because yes, you want to let people know it's okay to cry. But I kind of feel the same way. It's like, you actually don't need to see me cry. I think you get it already. Like you can breathe off the empathy, but I'm going to be over here and crying over here in the corner. Let that be my own thing. Then I'll come back and be like, all right, now we're going to crush this. But I had to have that moment, and then come back. So, I completely get it. And thinking about all that, and I think we've hit a point, especially now in the pandemic, that obviously vulnerability has been amplified because we're all living we're living at home, we're living at work, and it's been insane. Like, how has that been for you to navigate COVID? Being a leader away from your team, and keeping inspiring folks to keep moving.
Well, first of all, I'm also very grateful and lucky and fortunate that my close family has not been adversely affected, and now all parents have been vaccinated, so that is such an enormous relief.
Awesome.
So that that is obviously first and foremost, but certainly have gone through hand in hand with colleagues that have lost family members or friends or been inflicted by the fact that COVID's been a massive accelerator, good and bad. And when I say that, I mean, anything in life that was trending one way or another just got exponentially amplified in the wrong direction or the right direction, which is what we see from a commerce standpoint positively. But, other people who were struggling with things, I think, it just accelerated the downward direction or greatened the negative impact on some of those things. And I've witnessed that, and I can feel it with the people that I've gone through those issues with. From an organizational standpoint, I have a global company. I've been working on the West Coast, so I laugh. I am a notorious morning person, And that usually meant waking up at 4:45 earliest. But it was my time, meditation, go for a run, get your head together and get ready for the day. For me now, it's like immediately waking up at 4 and going right into a Zoom call with Europe and the UK, and then ending with Asia, oftentimes, late into the evening. That has taken definitely some adjustment, but it also has brought people closer together and in, daily virtual rooms that we wouldn't have been. So I think we did prove to ourselves that we can, be a lot more intertwined and present for one another in a physical way, even though it's virtual, face to face, where we were doing those through conference calls and not really feeling that access point, that we could have actually brought someone like myself into as many client meetings or as many brainstorm meetings as possible. Because if I wasn't in that location at the time and I wasn't on the plane flying there, then you weren't really part of it. So I think there's been a massive collaboration and integration boost and intimacy created through some of this. But at the same time, that said, I'm not kidding myself or trying to say that it's replaced, the physical being. I think that's why so many of us are exhausted is, even if, and I am part introvert, I think I still get massive energy from being with other people, and the exchange, the reciprocity of giving some of my energy and having it met and then brought, back reciprocally through others. And I very much miss the energy exchange and the human touch that you get from, being in the same rooms and being present with other people, truly, truly present with other people. And I can't wait for that to return. But I have definitely been one of those silver linings people from the very beginning of COVID. I knew that we had to just keep our eyes wide open for all of the unexpected learnings and insights that were going to come from a difficult period.
Yeah, it really has. And it's tested our resiliency, but I also think, in a weird way, it's been a gift to kind of get back to what matters and our creativity. And, I think even though it has been crazy, and I don't think I've ever had a more stressful time in my entire career, but I think coming through it, it's just what you were saying. It's like you learn so much about each other and your teams, and kind of going through the fire in a whole new way, and it makes you stronger.
I think that's why people too feel a lot of concern, stress, and anxiety for a quote unquote return to normal, or the feeling of pressure of when we have to quote unquote go back to work, even if that's going to be still more fluid and different. I think you can feel this mounting anxiety even when you try to have those conversations in the organization. I think it's because it wasn't just a 3-month thing or a 4-month thing. It's been a year to a year and a half, right? And people have adapted so much and also been open to receiving the positive change that they've been forced to make or accept or adapt to in their lives, that they now, want to be, they're now protective of some of that, whether it was walking your kid to school or being able to put dinner on the table and all have dinner together, or, cook or find new passions or have a side hustle that we were never able to truly get off the ground before. I think I think companies are going to have to really have conversations, individual, like one-on-one, that are going to allow for that kind of fluidity to continue in people's lives and to protect those things that people discovered, so that they don't feel like they're going to, potentially risk the positivity of what this change has brought to them.
You're so right. One of the women I interviewed for my 29 Days of Magic campaign, Dr. Tamika Stewart, said the same thing, where she's like, she's a behavioral psychologist. And so she's getting these calls from companies now about the sort of reintegration programs for staff, because you may have found an employee that, kind of was maybe on the bubble pre-COVID, is now an all-star because they've been able to build a work-life balance that works for them in a way from home that they could never have done being in an office. Well, are you going to mandate that person to come back to the office now, or are you going to keep let the person stay at home? And so it has to be a very slow and deliberate process to help organizations navigate this time, because if it's done well, then the sky's the limit. But if it's not done well, it could be severely detrimental. So it's going to be a whole new challenge in seeing how that all shakes out going forward.
I totally agree. And it's interesting because another debate that we've had is around culture. And a lot of people assume that culture must mean something that happens in a physical environment. When I think what's interesting is it's really tested us, and when I say us, even the industry and companies, to think about, okay, what is the hallmark of culture? What makes up culture? What are the attributes? And how, as leaders and as organizations, do you make sure that someone feels a sense of culture, and you're imparting that, and again, in a reciprocal give and get way that works virtually. And I think that, that was a really important test. You think about Silicon Valley for so long, where that was always about the campus and the free stuff and the freedom.
The ping pong table, right.
Exactly. And that for so long, was a misnomer, or, a misguided notion of what culture was really all about, until it didn't work any longer. And now I think we've really gotten the true ultimate test of, can we impart culture? Can we create a sense of feeling and being and ways of working that give true identity and an understanding of what culture can really mean for a company?
It's going to be fascinating to see how it all shakes out. So what do you think you'd tell 25-year-old Beth Ann?
Well, it's interesting because I'm still telling my now Beth Ann same thing that I would be telling my 25-year-old, and I'm still not listening. So I don't know if this would have helped me then, what I know now, because it's really hard. I guess it's all about, how you're hardwired. Sometimes, what you think you want to be listening to in terms of your own advice and learnings are sometimes, hard to make those real adjustments. But I wish if I could go back to that time, I did do things a little bit more, balance is probably not the right word, but I think I just wish was having more fun. And when I say that, I don't mean just fun at work, because I think that been one of my problems, is I've loved working so much. It really fed a part of myself. I get so much pleasure and fulfillment from my professional engagements. But I think sometimes to a detriment, or even with my colleagues, of being able to let loose a bit more and be a bit more relaxed through it all. And, just have the confidence in how things are going to continue to play out, that you can relax more and just really enjoy more and get more absolute joy out of your life and your existence. And I think that for me, that joy and work have been so inextricably linked that I think that would be the one thing that I would probably try to continue to work on it if I had a chance to go back to that age.
Awesome. And true. And it's so wild to think about how stuff has changed and what you can jump into, what you can't jump into. Yeah, it's a crazy ride that we all go on, and we don't realize how far we've come, and then we look back on where we were, like, wow, like, we've done a lot. And navigating all of this, being this executive, doing the merger. What does Beth Ann do for self-care?
Well, as I mentioned before, I have been a yogi for a very, very long time, like since I was a lot younger, because I had somewhat hippie parents. And so I discovered yoga books and meditations and things like that at a very early age. I am also been a runner since I graduated college, really, every day pretty much since then. So I would say those are both indulgences, because it does sometimes take time out of your day and things that you have to prioritize, but they are part of what keeps me mentally, physically, spiritually on track. So those are big ones. I'm also a big audio tape listener. I used to be a big reader, and I just, fall, like every time I sit down to read a book now, no matter how good it is, I end up falling asleep. So
Same.
I try to,
Absolutely the same. I have to listen to everything.
And it's you feel robbed. So I mean, once audiobooks came out, and podcasts too. So I, use my running, walking time, and then sort of even meditative time sometimes, or commute time when I had it, to still just gobble up as many books and, audio tapes and podcasts and things like that I possibly can. So those are some of my self-care things. And then just, of course, being with people that you love. And for me, that's a very large group, because I feel that way with a lot of my colleagues. But, spending time with people that you really respect and that you love and you like being in their presence, is hugely nurturing and cultivating for me.
Awesome. I miss yoga so much. Because I can't do it by myself. I kind of need to be in a class. Like, I really tried, and I was like, this isn't working for me. I actually do need the sort of energy of people to actually like calm my brain down to effectively do the poses correctly. So that's one thing I'm hoping that once we start opening up again, that I can get back into going to yoga. Because I always felt like I was like a foot taller after.
Yes, exactly. I'm definitely more competitive when I'm with a class, and I probably shouldn't say that, because it's completely the opposite of being, a yogi, or yoga's intended to be. Yeah, when I'm by myself, I just sort of listen to my body more, and I'm more internal about it, which I think is what you're supposed to do. When I'm in a class, I end up probably getting a much better, workout, and from the postures, and I get more out of the class, just because I am probably pushing myself more.
Yeah. Although I do love restorative yoga, where you like fall asleep, and it's for fun. And the class is 30 minutes to fall asleep. Awesome. That is my favorite yoga class.
My favorite posture.
I'm like, can I get these bolsters at home? Awesome. And last question for you. Do you have a give and an ask of the audience?
Well, we're obviously in interesting times, and I guess I would say two things. One is, we talk a lot about this at work, which is, using our superpower for good. So we're in creative commerce, we're reimagining commerce. And one of the ways we've really turned our superpower has been on, the people who are out there in smaller businesses, more diversity owned businesses, and letting our wallets follow our belief system, making sure that we're doing the work of buying from people and brands that stand for what we want to believe in and what we want to stand for, and the best of ourselves. So I think that's one that I would also put out there for others, and hopefully inspire others to think about, because sometimes we don't think about it. We just kind of action our habits and, where our defaults, our go-to, and not necessarily think about the seller themselves and who we want to spend our money with. So that would be one. And I think the second, as a leader, would be to pass the mic. And Laura, thanks to you for what you're doing and the conversations that you're driving and the people that you're reaching out to. But I've learned that a lot too, is there's so many people that have a story to tell, but may not have the courage yet to really reach the mic themselves, reach for it themselves. But if you pass it to them and you give them the spotlight, they step into it in a beautiful way, and to hear from those voices. So if you're a leader out there, or you're in a position to be able to pass the mic to someone else and hear what they have to say, listen more, I guess is something that I have been really trying to do more of.
Awesome. And so important, like that. I mean, I can't think of a better message, where, like, if you have an opportunity to speak somewhere, but someone who is fantastic and doesn't speak often, refer them. Like, because this is a fundamental thing that we have to keep doing over and over again. There are so many incredible voices out there who just, for whatever reason, haven't had the opportunity to shout it from the rooftops. So, hand it to them, like hand them the mic, because you'll be blown away by what comes out of their mouths. So I fully and wholeheartedly agree with that statement, Beth Ann. And you were fantastic in sending some wonderful, amazing women my way for 29 Days of Magic, and I can't thank you enough for that. And more importantly, thank you so much for being on the show. You just have such an incredible story and chock full of really incredible wisdom that lots of women need to hear. Because even I hadn't heard more of your story. So this was fantastic for me to listen and learn so much from you. So thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Laura, thank you for coming into my life and inviting me on your podcast. It's been a pleasure. And I would invite anyone that listens that wants to get in touch to definitely get in touch as well.
Awesome. We'll throw your LinkedIn in the show notes so folks can reach out. And that is our show.